Allie's funny. She's like, I didn't realize upstate New York was Trump country. Oh, yeah.
Mike's hot, by the way.
I haven't pushed go live on the Rockfin yet, but nothing wrong with upstate New York being Trump country.
Just say we're live on the other two. Or 4.
Hi, Allison. If you go to the private chat, we can talk. If not, we'll be on the air in about a minute. Or right-hand side of your screen. There we go. Oh, shit.
All right, we're live.
Hey, welcome to Slow News Day Live. My name is Steve Boykin, and I'm here in the Santa Cruz Mountains for a brief bit longer. My co-hosts are either on vacation or out and about doing other stuff, so it's going to be me. We're going to open up the phone lines in the second hour. Would like to thank everyone listening to the show on Aftermath FM and iHeartRadio. Welcome to everybody else watching on the usual platforms. Y'all, I am pretty stoked today because a couple of months ago, maybe, watching our good friend Ryan Christian's show, Last American Vagabond, saw he had a guest on there who had just recently walked away from corporate media and was kind of telling her story about that. Reached out to Ryan and said, hey, would you mind putting me in touch with this person? That happened, and here she is, ladies and gentlemen, Alison Morrow. I quit News TV. I quit the news. How's it going? How are you? It's good to see you. Oh, damn it. I can't hear you.
We got no audio. I added her to the stream.
Huh.
Might have to change mic.
You may have to select a different mic
On the setting thing.
Is that working?
Yeah.
Is that working? We're good?
It is.
Okay, good.
Hell yeah.
Running your own newsroom, you never know what's going to happen, right?
It's the beauty of truly live media.
Right. Right. Anyway, what I was saying was thank you for the invitation. I'm excited to be here. It's funny because when Ryan reached out to me and he texted me, I thought he missed a couple words. So what I read was, it's a slow news day, so these people want to know if you'll come on their channel. Like, they normally wouldn't want you, but since it's a slow news day,
That's hilarious.
they reached out.
That's
I was like, okay, well, that's a little brutal, but I mean, sure, whatever.
No, man. No, we're a little bit more laid back than that. The show's actually called Slow News Day because in a world where narratives are manufactured and delivered through a corporate owned media, every day is a slow news day if you're reporting from within the narrative. So
I see. Okay.
yeah. So
Makes
let's jump into it. You were an environmental reporter
Mhm.
up in Washington State.
Right.
And
Seattle.
I've got family in Renton and now in Paulsbo, and I went out a number of times when I was a kid. I haven't really been back as an adult too much, but beautiful country.
It is.
And also, Seattle is the first place that I got my head split open by a police officer, 1999 at the WTO protests.
All right, exciting. Yeah,
Both.
Seattle is definitely known for that. In fact, this fisherman that I used to interview a lot, really like wild hair, and very recognizable. He participated in those as well. Maybe you guys ran into each other. I mean, he's hard to miss. But the funny thing is, he's just one of being an environmental reporter wasn't always easy because there's so many politics involved in it that sometimes it'd be hard to get people to really talk about what was going on behind the scenes. And there are just all these alliances that are unspoken, and people who, for instance, know that they need a government permit to operate or do their research. And so they don't want to say anything negative about the government or any of these things. But this guy, Pete Knudsen, he would say whatever, like he had no qualms about him. So I would regularly ask him for interviews because he was one of the few people I knew that, in my hour deadline that I had, I could get him to go on the record and he would meet me wherever. And after a couple of times, somebody wrote in and he was like, I'm not concerned about that environmental issue that you're talking about, but I am concerned with this guy that just is always on your TV show. I've seen enough of him. But he was there with you, so you were in good company.
Hell yeah. It's so weird, the environmental reporting, because I've pretty much only been in the independent sphere of this. I briefly had a job at The Nation about 13 years ago. And then ever since I've just been doing it kind of on my own. And when like myself or my colleagues are going after an environmental issue, it's almost always because somebody lives in that area or somebody has already been an activist within that realm. Now, last year, the Colonial Pipeline in Huntersville, North Carolina, started spilling gasoline. It's about to be, or is, the largest gasoline spill in American history. A significant portion of the fuel supply of the East Coast runs through the Colonial Pipeline. We had been reporting on this and on the spill since January of this year, but not until Colonial got hacked did anyone even bring up the fact that they were currently under investigation for the largest gasoline spill in American history. We had been begging all of these NGOs. We had been begging all of these environmental groups. We had been begging corporate media, independent media, everyone we could talk to about this, and barely got, maybe an hour's worth of coverage out of, I don't know how many networks, both corporate and independent, and the complete blackout on a Koch brothers owned product, which is they're supposed to be the bad guy, right? They're supposed to be the evil right-wing billionaires that are funding all of the problems that are wrong in the world anywhere ever, is the Koch brothers. And here's a Koch Industries own pipeline, which again, all pipelines are bad because we have, and I'm not saying that like the people who were at Standing Rock shouldn't have been there. They should have been there. But I mean, if pipeline protests are a thing, if the Koch brothers are bad, why couldn't we get anybody to comment on this story? And then you find out like Snoop Dogg has a weed company with the Koch brothers. It's like, they're Americans for Prosperity is everywhere. There's so many different angles of where the Koch brothers feed into environmental projects that like, okay, well now there's a clear conflict of interest. Do we do no environmental reporting anymore? How does that work?
Well, the short answer is yes. We don't do environmental reporting anymore. I mean, for television, I was one of maybe 2 environmental reporters in the entire country. And I'm pretty sure the second one, or I could be number 2 and she's number 1, whatever. She was not even full-time. Pretty sure she was like a meteorologist who then dabbled in environmental reporting when they would let her off of the meteorology beat. And so just imagine you have one environmental reporter for all the TV stations in the entire country. And, I'm tasked with not only covering, I mean, I was a local reporter, but I did a lot of regional stuff because there was nobody else doing it. And I shot and edited all of my own video, and I had to have it all done within 3 to 4 hours a day. And so say it's a topic, which environmental topics often are complex. So say it's a complex topic and you're charged with trying to understand it in just a few hours. And it's not like you're sitting at a desk and reading documents and making phone calls and really digesting information. You're driving a car, you're putting your tripod out, throwing the camera, you're like just say 3 things because that's all I can fit into my 90-second story anyway. And then I have to get it on TV by 4:00 in many cases, definitely by 5. And so the system itself sets you up for failure when it comes to complex topics. I did the best that I could. And I think in some cases I did a really good job. And in some cases I probably did a really crappy job because I just didn't know what I didn't know. Here I was just trying to get things done. And it takes a really long time to get the nuances of some of these topics. This is why when you see the whole bleeds it leads phenomenon, it's just because that's low hanging fruit for an institution that just does not want to give its reporters the time and resources necessary to do a good job. And then on the other hand, you have reporters who are willing participants in that because, I don't know, maybe they don't really want to think. They don't necessarily want to be pushed to take apart some of these complex issues. I don't think there was like a long line down the street for people wanting to take over my beat when I left. Because it's one of those things where it's like, hey, you know what, if I can come in and I just put like a he said, she said thing on TV and go home and my day's over and I'm not thinking, God, what did I miss here? Or what's the next thing for tomorrow? Or like the fate of Puget Sound is riding on my shoulders if I don't get this right. It can be a really stressful job given the circumstances, like I said, of not feeling like the institution of journalism or sort of these newsrooms themselves, value necessarily what you're doing. Now, I feel like my bosses did more than probably any other managerial staff in the country. Obviously, my position still existed. I was grateful that I got to go out and do it at all. And they did send me over to Standing Rock, but halfway there, my husband found out his father died, so he had to turn around. But at least they were going to, it was a little late. It was after CNN had already gotten there, before like we had the opportunity to actually go when our local community was heading that way. But at least I went, or at least I was on my way to go. So I try to be grateful for the opportunities that I did have and the fact that they even still have the beat. That said, one of the reasons why I talk about this stuff is because I really want the average consumer of news to understand what little understanding many of us really have of what we're talking about, even the most well-meaning ones, so that you can walk away from it and say, okay, well, that's one thing I learned today. Is it true? Is it true? Should I go do some more research? The answer is yes. Should I stop talking to my grandma over what I heard today? The answer is no. So I just want people to have a realistic understanding of how the process works so that like at the very basic level, you can do better at understanding how these issues have come to be, and not walk away with the hubris of, I think, many corporate journalists who just think like they know better than everybody else. I would say, the YouTube comment section can just be a dumpster fire, but I would say a good portion of the people who comment are still smarter than many of the people that I used to work with. So, or at least know more.
Because you've got people who are specialists in their own profession who are just in the YouTube comment section bored and watching something on YouTube. The amount of encounters that I've had with people who like happen to hold significant degrees, or have worked in a number of different, incredibly highly specialized fields, just because they watch the show, versus the people that I would come in contact with through, it being assigned to, cover a specific presidential campaign. The difference between someone who's specialized in an area of physics versus someone who knows how to spin a newsroom. Those are two very, very different conversations. And I think it's critical for people to remember that the news isn't the final arbiter of the truth, no matter who's telling it to you.
Yeah.
You should always keep looking for, if you're satisfied with an answer because a professional told you, understand that you've ceded your ability to learn further on that issue by making that determination.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Oh, totally. Yeah. I think one of the things that I like the most about what Ryan does on his website and his channel is, I can't remember his exact phrase, but it's like, remember he says like something like stay vigilant and look at the sources for yourself or something. He always says that.
Yeah.
And I think that's
question everything is his tagline. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's a sign of somebody who has intellectual integrity and is not trying to hold you hostage in some kind of cult of information, because they're not scared of your going out and seeking other viewpoints. So, and you know, what's funny is that a lot of the people who are sort of labeled conspiracy theorists, journalists or whatever, give far more documentation for what they discuss than mainstream corporate news does when they make sweeping statements about things. And yet they're the conspiracy theorists, and mainstream news is the authority. How often are they attributing their sources? How often are they encouraging you to seek independent voices? They're the first ones calling for the suppression of information online and getting people all up in a tizzy about extremism on YouTube or wherever else and how we need to weed it out. And I remember after Trump got booted from Twitter, an old coworker of mine who now works for the networks was like on Twitter saying, okay, now that we got Trump off, now we need to go after the smaller accounts that your grandma tweets, the little ones that got like 50 subscribers. They were even more dangerous. And you're like, what? So why are journalists asking for these corporate entities in Silicon Valley to just suppress voices online? And I believe it's because they have no concern that their voices will be included in that. Maybe because they're not saying anything dangerous. They're not saying anything that would put them in a position where they're challenging these powers, such that they would get booted off. But they're all aligned now. They all just come from the same. They're all coming from the same class, the same ideological think tank. And so, yeah, they're not worried. Of course, they're not worried. So they don't mind saying, like, let's go after your grandma's Twitter account, because they don't think they're ever going to be lumped in, which is a sad reflection, frankly, that a journalist would feel so comfortable being aligned with these massive corporations and the government to such a degree that they would call for there to be more power for those institutions to be able to suppress independent voices. That's a sad reflection on modern day journalism.
No, it is. And there's this sort of academia to newsroom pipeline where if you've got the proper credentials, if you've had the right schooling, then you kind of have a baked in worldview and baked in opinion to go along with it. At least that's what I've found in the conversations that I've had with other former journalists who have left the corporate sphere to go in a more independent route. And they're constantly battling groupthink in the newsroom.
Oh, yeah.
It's not even that there's a spoken edict about how you're supposed to think or what opinions you're supposed to hold. It's just the culture that's created around you sort of dictates the way that you're going to operate, because people inherently want to go along to get along, not rock the boat, not make waves. And that your career is on the line if you step out of line, if you cross certain societal norms or boundary, and then the punishment for it is so swift and so immediate and so permanent that on top of this sort of culture of here's what we're going to say and do and think, you also have this culture of fear of, oh crap, I have to keep this. Now I'm here, I can't lose it.
I wish that the biggest problem was journalists who even had the awareness that they know something that would get them in trouble and that's why they're not saying it. But my experience was not that. My experience was that most are not even aware enough to be scared that if they said something, they'd lose their job. Most of them are touting, like you said, just sort of whatever the safe idea is at the time. And yeah, are journalists any different than any other human being? No, they're humans, but that's why we need to understand what's going on. Are they susceptible to propaganda? Absolutely. Are they susceptible to wanting to think in sort of safe zones like their peers? Yes. The problem, though, is that these are the people who are supposed to be challenging all of that stuff. And so, you're looking at them for something different. Let me give you an example. So this Ivory Hecker person, this reporter from Houston who people have been talking about, who, committed I call it suicide by live shot. She went on her nation's it is kind of a nation. Her newsroom TV station, she's doing a live shot about air conditioning and hot weather in Houston. And she's like, but first, I want to tell you that I'm busting my station and I have all these recordings and we're going to be releasing them on Project Veritas. So stay tuned to them. Anyway, back to my AC thing. And it never
immediately. They're like, no, bitch, you can't do that. No.
That was the most hilarious thing about it, because I don't know why she decided to do it at the beginning. It really cheated those of us at home, because if she'd done it at the end, we could have gotten that anchor expression, that when they go back to the anchor in the studio, that's like, you remember the lady that was like, F it, I quit in Alaska over cannabis. It goes back to the anchor and she's like, sorry about that. She really did kind of cheat us in that reaction. We didn't get because they got like a minute of her live shot to get everybody prepared for what was going to happen afterwards. But anyway, that said, she's, kind of now, like all the rage. We're just talking about what she's discussing. And a lot of that comes down to, her allegations, and these recordings do, I think, reflect that she's telling the truth in this part, that, hydroxychloroquine was just an unsafe topic. They just did not want to talk about hydroxychloroquine as a therapeutic, or even explore it as a therapeutic for COVID-19. And one of the recordings literally has the news director saying, we are going to oversee all of your posts from here on out, which is not, frankly, it's to have a contract that says the station can control what you say online and everything, that's not uncommon. We all sign those contracts. Everybody should know. On-air talent in corporate newsrooms, they sign contracts that say the corporation owns everything about them. It owns their hair, it owns their makeup, it owns their wardrobe, it owns what they say. So on one hand is like what she revealed to us, like that they were controlling her. Is that crappy? Yeah. Did she probably sign a contract saying that they were allowed to do it? Yeah. I mean, that's just the way it works. But, their statement in that was not like, hey, this is a topic that's going to necessarily be boring for our viewers, or or whatever else. It's like, no, this is an unsafe topic. And so that it shows that's how they think, it's like, it's so hard to get people sometimes to understand that the vast majority of corporate journalists are not even at the level of being able to be the evil, sinister Wizard of Oz behind the curtain who's like working with the CIA and pulling all this together. I'm not saying that at a high level there isn't stuff like that happening, but the vast majority of them they're just they're horns for whatever music is coming through the system, and they're just repeating it. Some because they just don't want to be aware, and that's a lot of it. It's just they're just going like bots. They're just going through their daily lives and their daily jobs, just doing that. Others because they really have a sense of sort of moral superiority about not going down that path. And I think that's one of the weirdest things that I've seen over the last few years, is a sense of superiority about not questioning. Because you're not a team player then, now all of a sudden, if you question, you're labeled conspiracy theorist or, any number of things. You're not a citizen anymore. You're like, wait a second, I thought journalists were supposed to do that, not pick sides and be team players, and then just not question authority. But I think we've seen that pretty clearly over the last year or two.
I'm really glad you brought that up. There's this, I don't know, almost schizophrenia in people, where over the last 20, 30 years, culturally, societally, we've been told, trust the science, believe the science, elevate particular professions to this sort of like godhood, right? Even with journalists. And you are right, not everybody gets to be Kindleanian. We can't all pick up the phone from the CIA every day. It's especially in media, like Kindleanian's in a class of his own there. But he's certainly not the only CIA reporter, but he's just the one that's like usually the most out in front about the fact that he's a wholly owned subsidiary of Langley. But there's this pressure culturally to put faith in these institutions, right? But then when you question, just professionally question whether or not what's coming out of an institution it has scientific value, you're a heretic. And there's this weird, like, almost quasi-religious treatment of belief and disbelief in what is supposed to be a method and process. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And nothing has reflected that, in my opinion, more than COVID. And it's so hard to get some of my peers to realize the breadth and variety of debate that's happening that they are not sharing at all, and the narrative that they're pushing that is propaganda. And they're just like, no, we're just playing it safe. That's how a lot of them see it. Like, we're just playing it safe. We're like, no, you're not playing it safe. You're, just to say that you're pushing one thing and not talking about the other, as if there's no debate. And let's just talk about, the COVID-19 vaccines. They act like there's no debate about this stuff. And there is a debate. And it only, I guess it's like, it doesn't, the idea that the news would push you to or to not get the COVID-19 vaccine is not my purpose. Like, I'm not trying to get them to tell you to do one thing or the other. I'm just saying, give people a realistic reflection of actual science that's happening right now. Real scientists are having real conversations about concerns over this, and then let people make up their mind. Don't frame a narrative that makes it like you're anti-science if you're asking questions. And that is how it often, that this person who looks this way has to think this way. And if this person looks this way, they must think this way. Or if they vote this way, then they must look this way or think this way. And, it's just these ridiculous constructs that are oversimplified. And like I said, for instance, I remember I was on Twitter not too long ago, and I saw somebody, they're like, well, how do we know if somebody's vaccinated? Because there's the big question about now you can start taking your masks off if you're vaccinated. And how do we know? Which, then tees up the question about, well, we should then surveil you and make sure that we know who's vaccinated and who's not. But the response was, well, this is how you know. They voted for Trump. They wave a MAGA flag. They live in rural America and blah, blah, blah. But see, that is such a reflection of how mainstream news has framed this conversation, to the point where we all just think like people with this idea are like this and people with this idea are like this. And it's so bad, not just for the issues themselves, because this affects how people vote. This affects how people buy their groceries. If you think that, a certain product on the shelf is, only bought by this kind of people, which is so stupid to think about it that way. But, I remember interviewing a wolf researcher back in Washington. He goes, when did wolves become Democrats? Like, he was like, I don't understand, because then once something that has no political affiliation or shouldn't gets affiliated with one side or another, now it's like, forget about it. You can't even talk about it anymore in any intellectual way. And so I just think, like, maybe that's part of the reason that it's done. It's oversimplified to a point where it just shuts down the conversation, and you never debate the facts about it. You just do these character assassinations or these oversimplifications without nuances. And then you just never have to actually discuss what's going on. But let's be clear, that's not science. So when they're like, believe the science, you're like, okay, believe the science. Where are all these other scientists' voices that you guys are not allowing at the table? This is not science that you're pushing. So let's just be, but like I said, most of them will just fire back and say, well, that's just the fringe, like, okay, let's talk about how science often works. Okay. There was a guy 50 years ago who said that washing your hands would prevent infant mortality or maternal mortality, the mothers dying in hospitals, because, doctors are going from one woman to another delivering babies and infecting it. And they're like, oh, this guy's crazy, washing your hands, that's stupid. And then he's like locked in an insane asylum, I think, by the end of his life. And now what do? We freaking wash our hands. But that's how it always works. That is science. That is how science works. Science isn't, you have a brand new pandemic that people are trying to understand and figure out and treat or whatever. And like, only the groupthink at the beginning is true. That's just, that to me is ridiculous. And the fact that mainstream news pushes that is extremely dangerous.
Well, and I think that even most people know that mainstream establishment, corporate, whatever you want to call it, is dependent on its advertisers. I don't know if people make a connection that the advertisers may in significant ways, not just be determining how the network operates, but how the government operates, especially if your main advertisers are defense contractors or tech companies. But that's or pharma, but probably a different conversation. We've got a really like dovetailing situation, I suppose, where the conversations and the politicization around COVID is feeding a larger domestic terrorist narrative and domestic terrorist agenda. Because for the last year and a half, we've been told that our neighbors are either potential disease vectors or potential domestic terrorists. We've been told the same thing about our loved ones. We've watched over the last 5 years, Allison, where people have lost friendships over who they voted for. They've stopped speaking to family members over who they voted for or what their political beliefs are. And often the political party attached to the belief has very little to do with what that party means or stands for or is supposed to according to its own marketing. But now that these narratives have been set, now that they're established, trying to break through them or walk around them or just have a conversation with someone in general is becoming harder and harder and harder. And yet we've got Joe Biden walking out just the other day saying, I need you to snitch on everyone. I need you to become the best citizen snitch you can be. And if you see something, say something, no matter what it is. Right. And this is a phrase that comes directly from Nazi Germany. This is exactly what that means. And now we're supposed to operate under it and not draw parallels.
Right. Yeah. And most, I think, maybe I shouldn't say most, but there are a lot of journalists that I know who would say, yeah, duh, of course we should be doing that. Cause like I said, they're all of that's kind of same team player mentality. I know that a lot of people, my dad is an orthopedic surgeon and he works at the VA and he was assigned to the vaccine clinic. And so he would say to people, okay, do you have any questions or concerns about the vaccine? No, I just want to get this over with and get my life back to normal. Okay, well, why do you think this is going to get your life back to normal? What does that mean? Well, I just want to be able to go to the gym again. I want to go to the movie theater. And he's like, had like maybe one person. He said at the time it was 0, but I'm going to just say maybe 1 or 2 people at this point because it's been a few months, said anything about getting it for health reasons. And like all of them were freedom reasons. It was all like, I'm getting this thing so that I can be free again, that is pushed by mainstream corporate news. One of the stories that I analyzed on my channel was about the FBI saying that you can go to prison for faking one of those vaccine cards. And, it's because you're using the federal seal. And so they're saying this is a federal crime. And the reporter, this came from my old station. And, I tried to be like gentle in the sense that I'm not even say probably, I'm sure I pushed propaganda at some point in my news career. Okay. So I never want to come across as if like I never fell to the same traps or anything. My awakening process took a while. I didn't just like wake up one day and I was like, oh, or just get into the business and know everything about anything that I was covering. But that said, the report basically was like, hey, the key to reopening Washington is you got to get vaccinated. And if you don't, or you fake it, the FBI is going to come after you. And there was just like, there was nothing in the entire report question whether that was a good thing, whether reopening should be tied to a certain vaccination rate, and whether, the FBI keeping tabs on people's vaccination cards is something that, a precedent that we want to set. I mean, it was basically just like, the FBI says this, and you better be a good little boy and little girl and listen to daddy and do what they say. And otherwise you're going to go to prison. No questions about whether that's something that should be happening whatsoever. And that is just, oh God, it's just such a travesty, man. It's such a travesty because it just fear mongers in people like, okay, either, if you don't get it, you're going to be all these, you're going to die, or if you don't get it, you're going to kill someone else, or if you don't get it, you're going to keep me from being able to go back to school or go to the movie theater or the gym or all these things. It's like, no questions. And like I said, I'm not even here trying to say that it should just be like a takedown of the federal government or anything, just offer a couple pushbacks. You know what I mean? Just a couple to be like, just one guy or one lady who's like, I don't think this is a good precedent to set. This sounds a lot like 9/11 and the Patriot Act. You know what I mean? Like just anyone who just offers another opportunity to look at, like, just so that people can go, oh yeah, okay. Because besides the fact that the ideas are not shared, and so for a lot of people, maybe, who are watching, they never get to think through those. It also sets up a framework, like I said, where reality is so oversimplified and miscategorized that, as you mentioned, it has real world consequences for how people even relate to their loved ones. And so they just, they're constantly inculcated with these messages day in and day out. And then they find out, oh, you're not, you're waiting to get the vaccine, or you're not going to get it. Well, like, I can't talk to you anymore because you're pro killing people, you hate the FBI, or whatever else these crazy things are, which, may have nothing to do with their reasons, and they may have valid health reasons to not get it, but because those are never presented, people just think that this is the way it is, and it is not the way it is. There's robust debate and conversation happening about this, and even if the viewer doesn't change their mind about it, at least they can walk away saying, I know there's debate about this, so I don't have to point fingers at people who disagree with me as if they're stupid or murderers or any other number of ridiculous things that it gets teed up for people to think.
So I've been doing this show for a little while now. And one of the things that I've heard that's honestly kept us going, really, is that frequently people will say, thank you for making me feel like I'm not crazy. Thank you for making me feel like I'm not by myself when I have these thoughts, and when I, read this information, when I try to circulate it. And we make a very, very concerted effort to only report on what we can prove, what's already been documented, and then draw some conclusions from there, or connect some dots from there. But that's stuff that everybody should be able to do. This idea that we somehow have to compartmentalize every piece of information and not look for connectivity, not look for the fact that in often many cases there's the same players involved in every sphere, and then to be told asking why is somehow criminal or somehow wrong think. That's when, I mean, I'm just wired the way that I would want to push back on that anyway. But okay, so I have a theory, and it's a new one. And I'm basing it solely off of a meme. But there's the Myers-Briggs personality test, right?
Oh yes, I know it well.
16 distinct personalities. According
what
to
are you?
I saw, huh?
What are you?
Oh, I would prefer not to say.
Okay.
No, I'm whatever the campaigner type of personality is. I can't remember what the exact.
I'm just curious if you're a P or a J at the end. Do you know that?
I think it's a P. Somebody's gonna tell me in the chat. I've admitted this like once or twice before, and I can't. I think it's ENFP. I think
that's what I am.
I think whatever the turbulent campaigner personality is, that's what I am.
Okay.
But there are out of the 16 distinct personality types, 4 of them are anti-authoritarian. The other 12, in some way, shape, or form, operate well within or as a result of being born into some sort of establishment and structure. That doesn't mean that 25% of the population is anti-authoritarian, because it's not an across-the-board breakdown. So out of 16 available personality types, 4 are wired to be sort of anti-authoritarian. And then you take that into a 335 million population, maybe 15 or 20% of those people are actually going to push back against authority in some way, shape, or form. And the rest of the population is going to either be the authority or be the governed.
Mm-hmm.
And trying to have meaningful conversations with people who are hardwired to just obey is hard in and of itself. But when you've got a propaganda machine that works relentlessly to not manufacture consent, because consent got manufactured by the time the ink was drying on the Patriot Act, but to manufacture confusion, to keep us divided, to keep us angry, agitated, confused, afraid, and malleable, it becomes almost fucking untenable, to where you're like, fine, fuck it, I'm out, me in the woods, that's it. By the way, I'll be moving to the woods in about a month.
You are?
Yeah, well, I already live I live in the Santa Cruz Mountains, I live in the Redwoods,
nice.
but I'm going further into a friend of mine has 60 acres in Humboldt County, and he invited me to have 5 of them if I became his builder. I've been a carpenter for 25 years.
Really?
And yeah.
Dude, come help us with our Airstream.
Okay.
We're renovating an Airstream to live in.
I used to do Renaissance festivals back in the day.
Really?
So
we used to go to those a lot as a kid in Florida. I grew up in Florida, and there were Renaissance festivals all the time. I used to love them.
Flarf and let's see, there were two major Renaissance, but anyway, but so when I got there, because I had a background in construction, and because, as you know, recreational vehicles aren't designed to live in, they're built counterintuitive for someone who would want to call them a home. What my first side work job was at the Renaissance Festival, I maintained for about 3 years because it was fun, is we would go in and gut trailers and then remodel them to make them livable for the people who were going to be, making that their home permanently as either a booth owner or as a manager for one of the booths. And it was a really fun gig. It was just remodeling start to finish. And I've done a number of Airstreams. I've done massive, old school holiday ramblers. The 50s style trailers that crank out for the slide outs. Those are freaking insane. Oh, they're a pain in the ass. But no, I've actually I've done that work, and it's been a lot of fun.
I'm gonna have to pick your brain about it. Yeah, we sort of fortuitously left Seattle for that dream that you're about to head out onto, to even, being out in really the middle of nowhere. And we live on 20 acres now, which is great, with 2 horses and everything, but we want more. I want my neighbors to look like, dots on the horizon. So they're still even a little bit too close, as nice as they are. But we can't really afford the amount of acreage that we want if it already has a house on it. So we bought this Airstream to live in, and then the plan is to build. But the problem was we bought it in, I think, 2018. And I know at that time, quitting my career wasn't really something that was at the forefront of my mind. And we also didn't know we were going to end up having a child in a year and a half. And so all that stuff, we basically gutted it. And it's just been in the same state of just completely empty. You could throw pencils through the floor and everything at this point for the last 2 years. And now we're renting this place. It has a huge RV garage, which we can work in, but it's just finding the time, as you know. I mean, it's something you really have to focus a lot of work on. And when we bought ours, it's a 92, 34-foot Airstream Excella. So it's really long. I don't even think they make them that long anymore. And then one of the reasons why we got it, but we wanted to do that and pay cash. So of course it wasn't something you couldn't really live in it right away. It needed to be the floors were all moldy and the insulation was moldy and all that stuff. But now looking back on it, I'm thinking, God, this is the reason people get rid of their old Airstreams, is because of the amount of time it takes to renovate them. But if you were to buy a new one, they're going for $170,000. And when we talked to this guy in Montana who renovates them, and because we're thinking, okay, maybe we could get him to do some of the work, maybe not all of it, but some of it. And he told us that he was renovating an Airstream that was 2/3 of the size of ours for this couple in New York. And he was literally charging $150,000 for the renovation. We're like, okay, that's out of our price range. So we might as well just buy a new one. So I don't know what we're going to do, but I'll definitely have to pick your brain about it.
and it's something that like I enjoy talking about. It's something that I will happily, share any information I have to the best of my ability, because I want the whole, like, one of the purposes of this show in general is to encourage people to become self-sufficient and become, sustainable, and then to take those skills and broaden your community and help create sustainable communities, because holy shit, are they making that impossible. Have you seen any of the countering domestic terrorism strategy reports, or any of the things that have been coming out from the Biden administration about who now is considered to be a domestic terrorist? And well, it's all of us, turns out.
Yeah.
We're all terrorists in the eyes of God and the government now.
Yep.
And this is, let's see, do I have it? Where do I have it?
Yeah, it's very expansive and ideologically based. It seems like it so that it could be interpreted any number of ways, which is always concerning when something like that has the broadness and variety of different interpretations depending on who's in charge. As a journalist, I think that would have concerned me even back when I was in the TV news business. Like, what does that mean if you are a journalist and you're questioning some of the stuff? Yeah. Anti-authority, violent extremism.
So this is the categories of what domestic violent extremists are. And we've got with ideological agendas derived from anti-government or anti-authority sentiment, including opposition to perceived economic, social, or racial hierarchies, or perceived government overreach, negligence, or illegitimacy. Allison, we have seen, decades of extreme government overreach, extreme government negligence. We have the highest infant mortality rate in the West. We have the highest result of like medical bankruptcies in the West, if that's not a negligent government. And then we have electronic voting machines. We have proprietary software. We have publicly financed, privately owned elections that we can't audit, that we can't see. When we do get an audit, it's less than 1%, and we're told that's good. More often than not, the federal government steps into an audit situation and says, no, now we need to protect the information of the voters. You're not allowed to see any of this information. So in terms of an illegitimate government, no matter what you think about any particular president, we had on the cover of Time magazine, and then inside, as its cover story, an article explaining to us that a benevolent cabal, Time's words, not mine, Time's words, a benevolent cabal of unelected billionaires and union cronies fortified
the election. They said save the election. Yeah, exactly.
Fortified and secured the election. If you were to tell that to America in 1980, they'd be like, hey, wait a minute, somebody overthrew our government. There used to be a time I'm 43. I can remember growing up where the majority of the people that were adults around me with just normal, vanilla, mundane jobs and whatever would be like, yeah, why would you trust the FBI? Those guys are notoriously crooked. Did you know about COINTELPRO? And now nobody does. The existence of the FBI as an institution that has not only spied on, but harassed, tortured, and extrajudicially murdered a number of American citizens has been memory hold to the point to where we're now supposed to uncritically go, okay, well, so the leader of the Proud Boys was a Fed. The leader of the Oath Keepers was a Fed. And there's 20 more members of the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys and these other, militia groups that were involved in this Capitol insurrection thing. I was there on the ground for that, by the way. Like, just
you were,
in a journalistic capacity, recording.
Oh, nice.
We're already in town. at the beginning of January because Julian Assange's extradition verdict was getting read. So we were holding events and actions around that.
Oh yeah,
And that was on January 4th.
yeah.
And then so we had those events booked. We were already planned when they announced the rally thing. We were like, a couple of us, at least in the group, were like, well, we should probably stick around for that. It might get a little wild. And so we did. And on the ground in real time, I swear to God, I looked at my partner at Action for Assange, Andrew Smith, and I was like, well, this is what an FBI operation looks like in real time, And on the plane ride back, when I was flying back to California the next day, the entire plane was loaded with Trump supporters. It was the wildest flight I have ever been on, like MAGA hats wall to wall to wall. And the flight attendants were scared shitless. Dude. God. There were people openly vaping on the plane because the stewardesses straight up locked themselves in the front and back of the plane. No service, no fuck you, you're not getting water, none of that. It was just, they were so afraid to talk to anybody. So masks off, like, dude, I was smoking weed on the plane. I didn't give a shit at that point. Kick me off. We're already over Nevada. Am I going to get a ticket? You're going to single me out for the 135 other people on this plane doing the exact same thing? I'll risk it at that point, But my point is, the people on the plane were saying we were used as set dressing for what is going to be undoubtedly a whole new series of domestic terrorism laws. And holy shit, here we are 6 months later with that exact thing coming forward, and it's always a conspiracy theory. Until it's a headline, until it's breaking news.
Right.
Just today. And then I'll stop rambling because I do that a lot. But I also don't have my co-host today to keep me in check and tell me stuff. But just today or yesterday, there was a breaking news saying that Google funded research conducted by Peter Daszak's EcoHealth Alliance, a controversial group that openly collaborated with the Wuhan Institute of Virology on back coronavirus research for over a decade. Now, I reported on that. This show reported on that last year. Last American Vagabond reported on that last year. My friend Jason Burmis reported on that last year. All of us are demonetized. Yeah, Ryan has to have backup channels running all over the place in pirate streams. Jason is almost exclusively on Rockfin now, running about 10 to 30% of his show on YouTube, cutting the stream there and then finishing it on Rockfin.
Yeah.
And I mean, we were punished for having these conversations. My friendship with Whitney Webb and the fact that she'll come on here to like half the time break a story or drop some news on something that she's about to go into, and then all of a sudden it becomes everybody's talking about Jeffrey Epstein, or everybody now knows that DARPA is involved with Op Warp Speed, or even the origins of Facebook. Like all of these things that people forget and then don't make a connection on. Those are always shoved to the furthest corners of allowable conversation until the narrative will allow you to find a way to now blame China for everything, or find a way to now blame this on Russia. And it's so insidious. I don't even know what the fuck my point was. I'm sorry.
That's okay. But what you're bringing up is, I mean, I got to say DARPA and all that. I mean, that's alphabet soup to most corporate journalists. Like, they have no effing clue what you're talking about. And I'm going to tell you this, like I on my channel, somebody said in the chat yesterday, I was interviewing this woman who quit TV, or well, actually she was laid off in a mass round of layoffs by Sinclair during COVID, but then she decided, what the hell?
That interview. That was okay. That was a good talk.
Okay. So yeah, she goes on Alex Jones's show and oh God, what was my point? What was my whole point? What were we talking about right before that? See, I'm losing my mind too.
Sleepy Josh?
Oh. Yeah. Somebody said, a while ago, Allison didn't even know what the World Economic Forum was. And it's like, you know what? No, I'm glad that you guys know what I don't know. I'm not even trying to pretend about what I didn't know, because I want you to know that I was one of the most fringy of my subset of peers, right? And yeah, I don't know shit about so much of this stuff. Like, this is all an unlearning and a relearning for me. Like, I listen to Ryan's stuff and I'm thinking, what? And so I never would have heard any of that in my little bubble of mainstream corporate news. So yeah, the stuff you're talking about it's like, it's not even anywhere near the horizon of, I would go out, I would say like 98%. I wouldn't even be scared to put up my old 401k against like saying 98%. Have never even heard of some of the stuff that you're talking about. For me, the demise of my career really began when I got into new media, because when I started paying attention to what people were saying on these different podcasts, stuff that I had never heard before, it was almost like a religious awakening of sorts. I'll be honest with you. It was like, you were raised in the, some kind of cult or something. And then you're like, wait a second, what? Like, that's not how it works. And then, you go through this process. First, I remember being really angry. What are we doing? I would like go into work and I'd come home to my husband and I'm just like, and, I had to go through this process of kind of like coming to terms with it all and reconciling, where I had been and what I was doing and what my institution was a part of and all this stuff. Because at the end of the day, like, I don't want to switch from one, just, take it at face value and never question it kind of way of being to just another. I want to really become a person who's starting to ask questions and is using the awakening that I've been lucky that I've had to go on a path where it's like the information I've sifted through and I feel confident on it because like I did the work this time. It wasn't just, I just went from like trusting one megaphone to another megaphone, but that like I started to become a different person who was like, okay, you know what? I'm not going to have a daddy complex or a mommy complex with information. I'm not going to, I'm not going to get emotionally triggered by hearing something that challenges my worldview or whatever else. Like I'm at the point where I'm like able to think about this stuff, without 10 years ago, probably I there would have been something in me that was like, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that. And so you don't want to just go from like one, just one kind of sleep to another kind of slumber. And so, like I said earlier, like, that's why I really enjoy people who are doing the work that you are doing, who just encourage people to do that. Cause it's not the information itself. I don't even think that's the most important. It's the structure of the way the person is thinking through that information that is very, very important, because that's something that you take with you after the information is, has come and gone, and then you're seeking new stuff. Yeah, to go back to your point about, our government and like, when you were talking about the lack of social infrastructure for people. I'm reading this book right now by a medical doctor called The Body Keeps the Score. His name is Bessel van der Kolk. It's about trauma, and it's really interesting if people like that topic. And, I just finished part 1 where he is talking about the differences of like incarceration rates in the United States versus places in Europe where, moms have can get home visits from nurses or other people who, can help them take care of their kids, where they get paid leave, where, there are all these social policies that help, kids become adults that don't have all this crap attached to them. And to act like, a journalist, for instance, doesn't have issues, right? That maybe they didn't, maybe it's not trauma necessarily, but it's some other psychological issue that they just haven't dealt with. You have a bunch of people who, are raised to either be on the worst side of things, they're abused, or they're victims of trauma, or they're just raised in environments where it's encouraged to just take whatever authority says and don't question it for one or another reason. When I'm on panels talking about reforming journalism, how journalism can have a rebirth or be trusted ever again in mainstream worlds, I never go to the level, the high level of okay, well, advertising and all this stuff, because frankly, you could have the most perfect opportunity and infrastructure available for people, but if you have just crappy, non-thinking, sleeping people, then what they're still going to push propaganda. You can't, like, you have to have healthy human beings who are thinking through material in a way where, they enjoy contrarian perspectives. That was something I never really quite understood, how that wasn't something that was interesting to people, that longer form conversations or contrarian perspectives, like, that's what I loved about being in journalism, was the person who was like, no, I don't agree with all of these sort of accepted narratives. Like, that was exactly the person that I liked talking to. And so then to see that kind of flip where it's like, no, now those voices are actively being silenced because journalists have decided they're dangerous or they're whatever. It just does not make any sense to me. I used to give my phone number, my work cell phone, I should say, to any person I met, because I knew that the people who were going to fish me the best stories were the folks that were usually overlooked by sort of the institutions, the authority figures. And so, I literally anyone, drug dealer, murderer, it didn't matter. And I remember when I went to Seattle, it was standard practice for reporters to use their personal cell phone, but they would get reimbursed by the station. And I was the first journalist who was like, I'm not coming unless I get a work cell phone, because I don't want to give my personal cell phone to everybody. But I want to give my number to everyone. And it made me realize, like, maybe journalists aren't giving their phone number to ne'er-do-wells, if you will. Maybe they're only giving them to safe people, and that's why they're okay with using their personal number. But I was somebody who always wanted to give my number to everybody. I wanted to know the people that were completely overlooked by the voices that were regularly in the news. That was fun. It wasn't even just like a job. That was fun for me. That was what I liked about being a journalist. And so it's like that person, to go back to the personality part of things. How do you fix that? I don't know. I remember having James Corbett on my channel, and I was like, what do you think it is about somebody who's awake versus somebody who likes being asleep? And he's like, if I knew the answer to that, I would be bottling it up and selling it. And I don't really have an answer for it, but I do know that that's where it has to start. In my opinion, anyway, it really has to start with people who, like, individually are excited, encouraged, and ready to be critical thinkers and enjoy the prospect of learning new things instead of pontificating about accepted narratives.
No, you're so right. And watching all this from the perspective that I am, because I've never really tried to join that 98% who doesn't know what DARPA is. It's like never been a part of my reality. Like, from a very young age, I had people in my life that were older, that were like deadheads and punk rockers, and I was eating acid and listening to Coast AM with Art Bell when I was like 12, 13. So the idea that my government was a benevolent force for good in the world and was here to protect me was just really never part of my worldview. And the one thing that I constantly try to remind myself that I fail at frequently is that everybody's on a path. Nobody is at the same spot on their path as I am, nor will they ever be. And so I come off as pretty abrasive from time to time. I'm overly critical of a lot of these people in the media because the information is out there, and I have found it inexcusable to me for a number of people that should know better to report the way that they report. And sometimes that's not fair, and I do need to remember that, like, my criticisms are rooted in a place of, I have always lived with this information and reported on it, not that it is seen as something that is taboo or completely wrong or dangerous. And so there's got to be sort of a bridge there. And I love that there's a media landscape now that offers that, because we've either had exclusively fringe publications in the mainstream, and there hasn't been as much a sort of bridge between the two. And while we have it, especially on a platform like Rockfin, because YouTube is the government, inextricably, you cannot take away the fact that Alphabet and Google, YouTube's parent companies, are intertwined with the day-to-day machinations of the federal government, of world governments for that matter. Google was showing China how to establish their social credit system not too long ago, a couple of years back. Got called into Congress to testify it during the Brett Kavanaugh hearings. And the reason we don't know about it is because the entire country was focused on Brett Kavanaugh. Meanwhile, just a few buildings down, Google executives are testifying about how they have helped create and maintain the social credit score system in China. Like, it just, our priorities are our priorities because we've allowed our media to dictate what they should be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I said, I struggle with this. I do struggle with something similar when it comes to just like looking at my peers, especially. I think the average person I have a lot more empathy for. My peers, I don't know if it's because I come from that world or what. Sometimes I just got to put down the phone and I'm like, I can't continue with this conversation because, but I have to remember that there was a time when I was completely unaware in a lot of ways. The first time I remember even sitting back and questioning some of this sort of big structural stuff that we're talking about was I started kind of an environmental / agriculture beat in my second job in Knoxville. And I went to do a story about electronic ear tags, how they were like putting these ear tags in cattle so they could scan them. And then if there was an outbreak of, E. coli outbreak or something, they'd know where it came from. And so, I'm just doing the interview, asking the questions I normally do. Why do you need this? And the rancher said, well, when they go off to a feedlot, then we can keep tabs on any, outbreaks of bacterial infections or something like that. And I said, what is a feedlot? I mean, I had just, because I'd only seen cows on grass. I've never seen a feedlot. Where are feedlots? I mean, they're intentionally kept away from our eye, right? Because even when I fast forward years later, I'm doing a story about a big dairy robot milking system thing. And they hand me, none of the cows are on grass. Not one cow is on grass. And they hand me a folder with a cow on grass, the press release kit. And the picture on the front is a cow on grass. And I'm like, so this is how the marketing works, where the images that they want people to see are constantly put in front of you. And the stuff they don't want you to see is hidden. And there's a lot of effort to keep it hidden. So thank you. My husband came in to help with the audio. Anyway, so the average person.
Tell your husband Happy Father's Day.
Oh, sorry. I will. Thank you. Yeah. So yeah, the effort that one has to assume for oneself to push through all of that is high. I mean, you can't just sort of go along to get along and then you'll just stumble across it. I mean, I guess in that case, I was a reporter, so I kind of did. And that was up to, I guess it could have gone any number of ways. I could have said, oh, okay, feedlot, whatever, and just skipped over. But I was like, wait a second, what? And then that changed. I mean, that one interview changed everything. If I were to sit back and say, like, what was the one interview that got me to where I am today? It was that. I had no idea there was such a thing as a feedlot. I didn't know about, how we had to go to the level of like electronic tracking of ear tags and stuff because the problem of these illnesses among these cattle and all this other stuff was such a problem. And then how does this affect our health? And why do these people get subsidies from the government? And then what? So it was food that actually changed my mind on, like, it opened me to this whole new world. And, at the end of the day, that's why we live the way we do now, because I just decided that the best opportunity I had to change that system was to start my own economy, basically in a rural place where I know where my food comes from. And then, screw the government subsidies and their whatever their agricultural chiefs are that come in and belittle the little guys, and then support the big corporate farms and just, it's just a mess. But I could vote till the cows come home, no pun intended. And it may not change anything, but I know I can at least change my little corner. And so that's why we decided, if we stayed in the city, we're going to be completely dependent on this infrastructure of eating, really, that I can't do anymore. I just morally cannot do this anymore. But for the people who are still in that system, for the people who don't know or whatever, like, did I used to be like, why don't these people care where their food comes from? Yeah, but on the other hand, I had to realize that like the average person, I mean, they're washed over daily, constantly with these images that are just completely false about where any number of things come from: their clothes, their food, their soap, all this crap that actually it has a far greater environmental impact than many of the topics that make it into mainstream news. These little things that you're poisoning yourself and the environment with every day, and you're just believing these corporations that are messaging you constantly. And if you don't have a moment, you're like, wait a second, what? Like that's happening? Then I guess I have empathy for the average person. It does get frustrating with people who are in a journalist perspective, in the same way it gets frustrating with me with doctors. For instance, when I go into my pediatrician's office and I hand her research after she pushes one or another crazy thing that my daughter should be doing, and she's like, I don't have time to read research. And you're like, you're the doctor. I shouldn't be the one that is who has the time to read the research. Like, if you are incapable of doing what's necessary to do your job, then at the very least, if you're going to keep doing your job, you should be open and honest about how little you know. Okay. So you could be like, hey, I want you to do this with your daughter. But then again, I've read no studies. So maybe you shouldn't listen to what I say. If you said that, then I would be like, okay, I'm comfortable with what you're doing. I don't like it. You necessarily like, I wish you were a better doctor, but at least you're being honest. But my problem with, any profession, whether it's medicine or journalism, is pretending you're an expert when you really do not know what you don't know the level at which you're pretending to know what's going on. And yes, it's frustrating that there's not an interest and a desire to know more. Is that new? I don't know if that's really new. Part of me just thinks this has been going on for time immemorial, which is why it's always been a small percentage of people who have changed history. And perhaps we should just continue giving the information for the people who are awake and want to be, be a participant in that, and not focus like negative energy on the people who are just, no matter what you say, are still going to be like, I don't want to hear it.
No, and that's, I mean, that's totally fair and reasonable and respectful, and probably why this entire interview is going to be shadow banned on YouTube, because it's, rational conversation. The narrative so often, and the way that we're supposed to react to it so often, is predetermined, and it comes from, like, we've got studies on this. We've got testimony on it going back decades. We've got Stockwell, he was a CIA agent, the very famous clip of former CIA agent talking about how the CIA in the 70s goes in and takes over a newsroom. And there's a wonderful book by Joel Whitney called Thinks. The subtitle is How the CIA Tricked the World's Best Journalists. And it goes back to the inception of the CIA, 1945, and the creation of Radio Free Europe. And it walks you through not just the co-option, but the structural organization of a ridiculous amount of media outlets. And this is all like pre-church committee. So in 1974, 1975, I can't remember which exactly, when the church committee took place, and Congress and then the country got to find out just how deeply entrenched three-letter agencies were, not just in their media, but in their, corporate structure, in their everyday world. There was a period where a legitimate chance to have an accurate media sphere existed, and then everybody forgot about it because there was a gas crisis.
Yeah. It's always the crisis that gets us to forget about things, right?
And that enters the whole like Hegelian dialectic part of how society functions, and the problem, reaction, solution that sort of every single time happens in a very, very predictable way. John Kiriakou is a CIA whistleblower. He disclosed the U.S. torture program on live television in 2007. I'm happy to put you in contact with John if he's somebody you'd like to talk to.
Oh, heck yeah. That would be awesome.
He ended up doing 32 months in federal prison for violating the Espionage Act. and I asked him on my show once, like, why is it always the same playbook? Why does it always appear to be the same playbook, at least for this particular agency? And he said, well, there's two reasons. One is these guys aren't as smart as we give them credit for. He goes, I ran a counterterrorism division. I'm not as smart as people think I am. But the other reason is there are never any consequences for this. Every time something happens where there's a coup and it blows up in the US's face, no one has to pay a price for it. And that's why
you get promoted to being an analyst on CNN.
Thanks to the Smith Modernization Act. Yeah. And it's perfectly legal. It is. Since 2012, we've had legalized government propaganda baked into our corporate media structure. And either people don't know it, they're not aware of it, or they can't recognize it because everyone's driven to distraction 100% of the time. Allison, I know you got to get out of here. Thank you so much for this. And by the way, everybody else, stick around. We've got at least another 45 minutes. We're going to open up the phone lines. I've got some stuff to go over as well. The Navy finally suspended a $500 million weapons project that went absolutely nowhere. A lot of fun stuff to get into. Allison, please tell everyone where they can find you, how they can support you, and come back. This has been phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope you'll come on my podcast to talk about Assange, because that would be
100%.
awesome.
Yeah. We're in the middle of a nationwide tour with Julian's father and half brother.
Oh, great. Well, I'm so glad we connected, because it has been a little difficult finding people who can talk about it from a really knowledgeable level. I think there are, a lot of people interested in it, but it sounds like, yeah, you've been in it. You really know. So that would be great. I'd love to. The last one I did was actually exactly when you're talking about, right before January 6th. I had an attorney on who worked with the New York Times back in that, I think it was the Pentagon Papers case, but it was like basically they won that famous case where they were not forced to turn over their sources. I don't know if you remember that, but and so he came up. But I've just had a hard time getting journalists, or people who are knowledgeable about it, and it is really weird that there aren't more journalists talking about that case. It just seems like
I have a number of ideas as to why, and I've had a handful of private conversations with journalists as to why, and I'm happy to share all of that.
Oh, yeah. So interesting. Yeah. Because if you're going to get all upset about Jim Acosta losing his White House press pass, but you're not talking about Julian Assange, I just don't understand what's going on. But I'm on YouTube, Alison, just Morrow, my name with one L, Allison with one L. But of course, as we've talked about, there's censorship on YouTube. So I'm on Rockfin, Locals, Odyssey, and anywhere else. I have a Patreon, but I'm trying to move people off Patreon because, again, another one of those places where you just don't know if you're going to show up to your office and it's going to be closed down for the day. So just it's all of those are just my name, Alison Morrow, Morrow.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. And this has been a great conversation. I'm glad we got to connect, and I look forward to talking to you again. And I fly out to Denver on Tuesday. I'm going to be with the Home Run for Julian tour for the duration of it. It wraps July 1st in Washington, D.C. July 3rd, Julian Assange's birthday, turns 50 in Belmarsh Prison. We're going to hold events all over the world, but I'll be in Los Angeles for that. And then after 4th of July weekend, I'll be kind of, settling back into all of this. So we'll definitely connect with you after that. And thanks again. Really do.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
And everyone else, stick around. We are going to open the phone lines. 657-298-4767. Give us a ring. Let us know what you thought about Allison, the interview, anything else that's on your mind. And in the meantime, I wanted to play this absolute shit show. So guys, I have children, and I believe I've mentioned that one of my kids just got his first job. So this one cut when I saw it. Go ahead and full screen this, and
At 10, you're stuck. You're not really a kid, and you're not really an adult, and you're very clearly not a teenager. But seriously, I can't wait to work. I can't wait to really work, to have a job, to have responsibility, to be treated like a adult. I'm happy when I work. I'm happiest when I'm busy, and I'm most fulfilled when I'm contributing. Yeah. I love goofing off. Sleeping in. I love my computer, my phone. Mom took my phone from me though. It was like taking me off life support. But and I'm sure you do. Doing nothing all day in front of a screen, it doesn't make you feel good just looking at it all day. Unless you're doing something on it. But if you're just looking at it, it's useless. Do you guys agree? Say 10x if you agree. This year, let's agree to work more, not less.
What the fuck is that?
That is a 10-year-old.
That is a drone. It's a fucking straight up worker drone.
I saw that and I was like, the first thing I did was called my kid and I'm like, yo, quit your job. Holy shit.
Hey.
That's freaking wild. This is, I've talked to Glory about this. I've actually had Glory talk to my kid about this because my son at 14 was like, yeah, I need to figure out what I'm going to do. I've got to have I need to know where I'm going to go to college. I have to know what I'm going to specialize in, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, bro, you're 14. No, you don't have to have this figured out yet. You don't. You can have an idea, but bro, you've got another dozen years before your brain fully develops.
All right, we go. I'm coming in. You are live.
Yellow?
Oh, hello. Is this Steve?
Yeah, hi, who we got?
So, okay. I wanted to find out, I'm doing great. I love your show. I love how you unite people. I love that lady that you just had on. And I was calling in because I kind of wondered if you had ever looked into our actual election integrity, which I did in 2018, and found things like the 1992 book called Vote Scam.
What's the name of that one more time?
Vote Scam, like voting, V as in Veronica, OTE, S, C is in Charlie, A, M as in Michael, and it's got a colon, and then it says the stealing of America. And it goes back, you can maybe find a synopsis on Kobo, or maybe I can link that to you on Twitter or something. Anyway, it's a 1992 book by someone who ran for office and his brother, I think they were both lawyers, and they found a whole bunch of different rigging going on way back then, going back 2 decades from then. So even Mark Crispin Miller has got information about this. And anyway, so I just thought you might like to know that. Plus,
I will definitely take a look at the book. Yeah, election integrity is something that we've talked about fairly frequently here. Just last week, we had on Fiorella Isabel from the Convo Couch, those guys are election integrity activists.
Yeah.
While she was on to talk about Peru, we've had extended conversations about America's voting system, and it's undeniable that at least since the introduction of electronic voting machines, we've lost 100% of the ability to say whether or not we have free and fair elections. But you're right. Before that, massive voting fraud throughout the history of the country, and it's just so bad. Well, I've said on the show before that I don't know, I have never been shown evidence that we've had a free and fair election in my lifetime. I was born in 1978. I have no way to prove that any election that happened since I've been alive was free and fair. I don't. And I think that, if we're going to pretend like we have a democracy or a representative republic, at the very least, we should allow for a public or third-party audit of our elections.
Absolutely. But I kind of went backwards, because it was 2018 and I'd seen the Democratic cheating, and I found the documentary Hacking Democracy.
Excellent
With Bev Harris, who became an expert on the voting machines.
Yeah.
And that was bad enough. And then I found, like, Mark Crispin Miller did a book called Fooled Again about the 2004 election, but there are like 5 or more books out there about that election. And, I just kept going and going, and I came across different things. I came across boycotting elections by a guy who had been an election integrity activist from 2000 to 2006, and he gave up on us having fair elections. And then I found Vote Scam, which you can't find a copy unless you're willing to pay at least $600. It also had a re-release in 1992. In 2012. It had a re-release, a 20th anniversary release. I have not been able to spot that anywhere. Wow. It's very interesting. And it's voting machines, but it's all, we've seen they've got many ways to cheat. Anyway, I say, listen, when they want to squash us uniting, that's one of their big focuses of the establishment, right? Is they panic about us uniting, scare us away from that. And they also want to scare us away from thinking that there's anything wrong with our elections. Those are some 2 main topics we should promote.
No, you're absolutely right. There's a wonderful phrase that a writer named Helen Beniski, who's been on the show before, came up with, that it raises a forest of red flags. And the 2 issues that you just mentioned, every time in my head, I just see that forest of red flags standing up. I mean, we kind of get in a groove here, and we don't, we were just talking about this, how we kind of need to, like, spread out the show a little bit and maybe pull back and sort of, have some, like, review episodes kind of, or do some material, like do some shows that don't necessarily cover what's breaking and in the moment, but kind of, provide some historical context for what we've been talking about on the show. And I'm going to reach out to a couple of people.
Cool.
Pardon?
I said, that's cool. That's actually, I kind of think that some of these places like yours, we have to focus, and just like you focus on also Julian Assange, there's certain things we should prioritize and keep getting that info out. And one of the things I would love, but I'm really prejudiced, is because I've dug into the corruption of how they embezzle the government money when they lie us into wars, and why they want the control of the money levers of other countries. And it goes against a lot of what we thought we knew, but when you see it, I can't unsee it.
Is this the John Perkins Confessions of an Economic Hitman kind of vein, or
I didn't read his stuff. I haven't. I did listen to an interview. It's a little like that, but he doesn't. None of these people, like Smedley Butler and John Perkins and all that, none of them told us what privatization is.
Yeah.
And right, and some people kind of allude to it obliquely and say it's a bad thing, and then I get other people who've actually said to me, "Oh, everybody knows that." Well, oh really? No, if everybody knew that, Congress would be run off into the ocean. So, because they're embezzling federal money for themselves while telling us there's not enough. And like, once you kind of put the pieces together, it's like, I came across it bit by bit because I always had questions, because I was in business. And I went, how come these people take over this thing and they go on the stock market and they make a lot of money? I don't know what's going on there. Well, now I know it's corruption.
Oh, 100%. And we've, built a system based entirely around rewarding the most corrupt, promoting the most corrupt. We give uh billion-dollar bailouts to the corporations who intentionally went and bankrupted or reduced to homelessness a significant portion of the country. It is it's counterintuitive, but at the same time that we've all been so intentionally divided, and we're also intentionally distracted, and we're pointed at the wrong people as to who our enemies are supposed to be. This notion that we're supposed to distrust our neighbor or distrust our family member, but trust the government, trust big pharma, trust the media. That it's so nonsense. I know. It drives me nuts. It really does.
I have a short version of more of privatization here since the 70s. I've got a little longer version of privatization since World War II. But if people knew, like you're saying, well, we get distracted. Well, part of why it's easy to distract people is because they don't know the truth and they don't therefore see a solution and what they should be going for. So then they're looking here and there and they're going, but what can we do? What can we do? I think if more people know how the corruption works, and it's not just bailouts, it's everything from, the wars to the prisons to eating chunks of Medicare since the 1970s to taking over bits of the post office to our Obamacare. Like all those Republicans who wanted to, didn't they try? How many times did they try it? They said they tried to repeal it. Do you believe that?
There were over 40, I believe, House votes, maybe even 50, where they symbolically repealed Obamacare, knowing the whole time that it was going to be overridden by the president. It was merely a show, but it was a show that allowed them to continue to endlessly fundraise and endlessly politicize this issue that like incorrectly. Because Obamacare was just a giant blowjob to the health insurance industry. That's all that it was. It punished
privatization. It's privatization. These liars always call things private or for profit to hide that it's privatization because they know that there's public backlash against privatization, even when people don't know exactly how the corruption works.
Oh, you're absolutely right. You are. And Josh is telling me that we need to take another call. So I appreciate you calling in very much.
Yeah,
thank you for watching the show.
Your time. Okay, thank you.
No. I appreciate the hell out of it. I do. This has been a really good conversation. I'm going to do everything I can to try and track down vote scam.
I've got a copy here, and I think you can get an ebook for cheap.
Okay. Well, if it's on Audible, Jamie Deluxe has given me his account login, so I can listen to any.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Well, that's a start. Okay. Thanks very much. Thanks for the great work you do.
Oh, thank you. Happy Sunday.
You too. Oh, and happy Father's Day. You're a father. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Moving on. I do want to thank everyone for listening, for calling in. Please keep that up. Phone lines are open for about another 30 minutes. 657-298-4767. Give a ring. Let us know what's on your mind. I do want to go back to let's see, where's my goddamn share screen? Here it is. Some headlines over the last week that underscore the you will own nothing and like it. Not only do we have Berkshire Hathaway and BlackRock, Lloyd's of London, there are massive Chinese firms buying up everything. Let's go ahead and go to the call.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, who we got?
Hey, it's Minnie Ninja Love here.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Hey, I wanted to say that I really am enjoying the conversation today. I thought it was great. Allison with one L was terrific. And I want to hit on a couple things that you guys brought up, which was talking about Julian Assange and how we can ramp up and use, whatever leverage we can to try to get him out of there. And you had suggested that you're friends with John Carrico. And I happened to get his attention the other day, which was really good. He was on a stream, and I brought up the Clooney Foundation.
Okay. What was John? Did John respond to that at all?
He would be. Yes, he was like, "Thank you." I had no idea. He looked shocked, and it's kind of astounding that none of these people have listened to this. But like you said, we're all at a different place of what an evolution. So and he said it. I mean, he really did appear, and I was pretty hyped up when I was talking on the stream too. And I'm like one of those actors that never go back and watch like their movie. Like, I don't want to go watch what I said, but if you want to, you can, Steve. But John was significantly, visibly shocked by the mention of it, and he said that he would look into it. But I thought maybe a push from you and a call from you, because I know we've had some, conversations regarding this, and it's significant. So, let's try to make.
Go ahead and look. I mean, John's a friend of the show, but not like personal friends. Let's go grab lunch when I'm in town, kind of thing. But yeah, dude, I've been talking about trying to bring him back on the show for a while now. I haven't had him back on. I'll be perfectly honest, because he gave me two different answers on 9/11 when I asked him. And they were and that was the third different 9/11 story that I had heard from him. And I've got like, part of me wants to be like, well, there's just some things, that people can't talk about, that people can't. And I know that he went to prison disclosing information about the CIA, but to have that many different firsthand accounts of what happened at the Pentagon, little bit suspect. But again, dude, everybody's got their everybody's got their lines that they're not going to cross. I don't know what kind of pressure he's been under, but let's talk about the Clooney Foundation a minute. Let's do that, because people forget, and let me just set this up for everyone who's watching who may not be caught up. People forget that for a few years, Amal Clooney, before she was Amal Clooney, was a WikiLeaks attorney. In 2012, I believe, 2012 or 2014, she married George Clooney. And at that point, pardon?
It was 2014, and a whirlwind romance. Like, literally, they married after like 6 months. And remember at this time, you guys, George Clooney was the hottest, sexiest man bachelor ever. And we kind of know, we don't need to get into this, but the Hollywood connection with the Department of Defense and the Pentagon and CIA and all that is definitely real. And so let's put that, I just wanted to put that a little in perspective there, just how alarming this actually is, that all of a sudden George Clooney just happens to meet Amal Clooney, right? So go ahead.
Well, and let's let's establish where George Clooney is too, because The Hurt Locker came out in 2008. The Hurt Locker was entirely written and produced with DoD help, and CIA help. And there's a very clear relationship between, intelligence and the government and Hollywood. It's been documented and established since Hollywood's inception, because they started out making propaganda films for wars. And so to dismiss the relationship between elevated, celebrated figures in the film industry, and the intelligence community writ large is silly. Flash forward 5 years, and George and Amal Clooney meet, start dating, fall in love, 6 years later get married. And at that point, Amal Clooney ceases to have any representation for WikiLeaks. Jen Robinson becomes WikiLeaks's principal attorney for that continent, I think, because WikiLeaks has different attorneys in different countries, and when they have to be their international organization, they would have to have international representation, because you can't cross-pollinate where your law degree goes very easily. It's hard to be a lawyer in both Australia and Italy. It just doesn't happen.
Right, Steve, I want to jump in real quick, and anyone listening to also know that Jen Robinson, Julian's attorney, and she is currently advising him, was, correct me if anyone, a maid of honor. If not maid of honor, she definitely was someone super special at George and Amal Clooney's wedding. I believe she was maid of honor. But just to show you, I have pictures and stuff.
We could look up.
She's very close to them. She's very close to them. So that's just another. It's just a weird connection there.
I know she was an attendee of the wedding. I'm looking up right now to see if there's if they say.
She's on. There's several Twitter tweets, of her saying, "My best friend Amal, my best friends George and Amal." Like, I have all these tweets, so there's clearly
for sure.
Yeah.
And then the Clooney Center for Justice, which is a thing that exists. There's I'll go ahead and pull it up on screen so everybody can see. Have I done this already once, Josh? I can't remember. Okay, let me get it up on the screen. I know I've taken a look at it before. I don't know if I've done it during a
it's not
yeah, I think we did it, but I'm not sure.
So here's the Clooney Foundation for Justice. They have a trial watch segment. They're monitoring the human rights of people who are locked up. And so let's go to advocacy to see who they're advocating for, right? Or what the advocacy is about. Right. For each trial monitored.
With Esha. Hey, I spent an hour on the phone with Esha from Historically. I'm sure everyone's familiar with her work. And she's super smart. Her brain works in a highly, voltage kind of way, but she remembers names and facts. And so she went through this list. And one, she kept, in her high-pitched voice, one was worse than the other ones, which she went through these people. She's like, these are all regime change specialists. Every single one of the people on this Sky Angel. And I was like, yep, this is it's a fake site for regime change warriors.
Well, let's look at the advisory board. Let's look at that, because there is Edward Fitzgerald, who is Julian Assange's lead attorney in the UK. At no point, by the way, anywhere on the Clooney Foundation for Justice is Julian Assange mentioned. Yeah, I mean, we've got all these high-powered attorneys. Philippa Webb. I've looked up a handful of these people. Their connections are generally all to like
Jeffrey Robinson
pipeline law firms that.
Jeffrey Robertson is also on that list. He is a current legal advisor to Julian as well. He was actually one of the advisors that was caught on the film, UC Global, that was spying on Julian. Mm-hmm. He was one of the attorneys visiting Julian in the embassy, and that videotape has been released. That was Jeffrey Robertson. So there's two people, well, actually four, if you consider Amal Robinson, who's promoting this foundation. And then you have Julian's head QC attorney, one of them. He was one of two. And then you have Jeffrey Robinson too. And those are the only ones. There could be more that are connected with Julian that I don't know about on here. But for those, I definitely know because I was at his trial. I actually saw Edward Fitzgerald, head QC for Julian. So I absolutely know that is fact.
Well, this is something that is going to take a lot more than like 10 minutes on a phone call to delve in. We are at some point going to do a whole ass deep dive on it. Josh is telling me that we have time for one more call. So, I'm gonna ring off with you for now, but we'll catch up soon. Thank you for calling in. And yeah, and if there's people out there who have more information about what the Clooney Foundation for Justice does, reach out to me. Let me know.
Sounds good, Steve. Thank you. Let's get this done soon.
All right. You take care. Thank you for calling in.
You too. No problem. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, y'all, we've got 17 minutes left over on Aftermath FM and iHeart. I have a pretty hard out at noon, too. We're going to run down to Santa Cruz. Hello?
Hello, this is Skybox. Just wanted to give Allison like an A grade as, yeah. Just gave her like an A plus. She did a fine job in that interview. 2 thumbs up for her.
Right on. Yeah, no, she was fantastic. She was. It was a good talk. I'm definitely stoked we got to connect and have her on. I liked a lot of what she had to say. It was nice to be reminded that 97, 98% of the country has absolutely no fucking idea what I'm talking about.
And I hope Julian Assange gets free soon so he can meet up with his family. Says he suffered long enough. So is Commander X. He says he should not go through the same suffering as Julian Assange did too.
100%. I just saw before I went on that Stella Morris, Julian's partner, was able to see him, and he was able to see his children for the first time in 8 months, and that is just really gotta suck. And I don't even know if these are in-person visits or if they're seeing him through glass. Like, I don't know if they get to go into a room and he actually gets to have physical contact with his own family, or if there's 3-inch thick glass that he has to see them through, because that might even be worse.
Yeah, I did see a glimpse of that through YouTube. I did see a glimpse of that. Not much. Are you there? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask if that was it, or if you had another question, because we could still take we would have time for one more call if that's all you had to throw at us for the moment.
Yeah, I just wanted to say to show you from my full support for independent media, including the ones, of course, I have to be cautious with Breaking Point, though, ever since, Crystal with, her history with her husband that has corporate money. It disturbs me since I heard it from Franco.
Yeah, and shout out to Jack Sith for doing the initial research on that and bringing it to Franco's attention. And Jack told us about it, but I mean, to be perfectly honest, I don't give enough of a fuck about Crystal Ball to like. I think we talked about it, but I know we didn't do the thorough dive that Jack did on the research or Franco did on the show. And I honestly, dude, my own arrogance at that point probably came into play because I'm like, well, yeah, she's crooked.
Mm.
All right, man. Well, thank you very much for calling in. Appreciate it, and I'm sure we'll hear from you again.
Okay, may the nature of the light be with you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Right arm. Let's see. What else did I have? There was something that oh, that's right. The goddamn Navy thing. While we're waiting on someone to call in. The the endless money pit that is the US military, the massive suck hole of fraud and waste and abuse that we know so much more about because of brave whistleblowers like Chelsea Manning. Man, they throw a lot of money away. The Navy's railgun looks like it's finally facing the axe in a
railgun.
Railgun.
They had a railgun.
Railgun. You didn't know about this?
No.
16 years of R&D, the U.S. Navy appears poised to kill its electromagnetic railgun program. The service has not asked for any new funding for the project in its latest budget request and says it will wrap up all the work it has planned now by the end of the current fiscal year before effectively putting what's left of this into storage. Here we go. And I didn't click share audio on this, so we're gonna have bad audio. But in fact, I'll just mute it so it's not terrible, and we can kind of see it, sort of in action. But yeah, electromagnetic railgun.
Like games to destroy starships and shit and planets.
Yeah. Yeah.
Holy fuck.
The Navy's like, yeah, sure. Well,
Jesus Christ.
Was it a fucking piano?
It's vaporized now, whatever the fuck it was.
Right? But yeah, so for almost 2 decades, look, they had their own graphics and branding and everything. The Navy railgun, they just blew it up. For almost 2 decades, they had this project going, and it was really just so okay. The ONR formally began work on the railgun project in 2005. Funding for it has come through a number of different line items. In the past, has sometimes caused confusion and led to erroneous reports that the program had been canceled. With regards to the INP Advanced Technology Development account, the budget documents say that the decrease in funding is due to the completion of Advanced Technology Department efforts under this activity. So yeah, they're done with the program. It's come to completion, and now it's just going to sit in a warehouse.
I mean, it's completely fucking useless.
Railgun technology and knowledge attained will be documented and preserved. Railgun hardware will be realigned to maximize its sustainability to facilitate potential future use. Huh.
What the hell is a railgun? Jesus.
Who needs a railgun? I mean,
dude, like the amount, like, one, they're huge because the magnets you need. Like, where the hell are you gonna like have time to set up a fucking railgun to shoot at somebody? Like, ever? They're stationary as hell.
Dude, this is why you have one. Because the ONR said it demonstrated the ability of at least one of these weapons to fire around at speeds greater than 4,500 miles an hour. 6 times the speed of sound.
Yay.
That's why you have one. So you can like utterly, completely, totally destroy some. That shit.
Dude, I bet you Brian Williams watches this to get off at night. Like, yeah!
Dude!
Girl. Don't go, girl.
Call me Joey.
I'll be done.
That's right. Dude, yeah. So I mean, this is 100% how you get Brian Williams to come buckets. It is, but wow, man, and they stopped this project. You can.
I mean, you can do the same shit with a cruise missile for probably a tenth of the price. To be fair,
That's insane, man. That's insane. Well, if we're running, we are kind of running a little bit short on time. We got about 8 minutes. If you want to call in, now's the last time to do. We're going to close the phone lines. If we do not get a call in the next like minute or so, 657-298-4767. We should do some business, and there was a super Ray or two. RW, thank you very much for the super Ray. WM, thanks, Steve. I appreciate this convo took place. Me too. And I appreciate the super Ray.
it's always appreciated on Slow News Day. I had to go.
Yeah. Just shout out to Glory and Allie.
He's having fun, both of them. Oh, we got last call.
All right.
Hello.
Hey there.
Hey, who we got?
Rob. It's me, Rob, calling from Canada.
Wizard, what's happening, my friend?
Hey, I just wanted to bitch and whine and moan about the sad and sorry state of the so-called intelligence of the world.
Okay.
What do you
got?
I don't believe it took this long to shut down that railgun thing. That thing, man, it cost the energy of a city of like New York just to run it for a few shots. It's just crazy business.
No, I mean you're absolutely right. I wonder if there's even a discussion anywhere on the amount of energy it costs to
those
generate
magnets are
something.
Like you have to like that kind of shit. You got to charge up like the capacitor banks for like a half a day or probably to do a shot, dude. It's like it's nuts.
Oh, and then they found out that China has a prototype naval railgun that they started developing in 2018.
It actually works though.
Yes, peace does. According to me, Canada is wide open. Anybody can come here and live as long as they like, as long as they're good to everybody else, you know?
You heard it here, folks. Rob Juno says invade Canada for peaceful purposes. And you're all welcome to just go to Justin Trudeau's house and annex it.
Tons of government weed. We got tons of government weed that we might as well just give away because it's already been paid for. And we got a healthcare system. Well, okay. Let's be honest about the healthcare system in Canada for a second, all right? There's a guarantee that if you're in trouble, you're going to get help pretty much no matter where you're from or who you are. But sustaining that help in a meaningful way, oh my goodness. Wow, do you have to jump through hoops sometimes?
I mean, I've been to a doctor in 6 years here, so I'd prefer that.
Yeah, I'll bet. I mean, I'm not knocking the good. I'm just saying that, wow. And in the time of the COVID, it just multiplied all out of hand. So many forms need filling, so many permissions need arranging, so many schedules need overlapping. And all at the time that they were focusing on the COVID shit, people with genuine problems. Okay, seriously, seriously life-threatening cancer and organ failure problems. These people are getting put on the back bench in order to make all kinds of very public room for the PR stunt that was the reaction to COVID. So,
and that's an aspect, Rob, that's a part of this that, like, I don't think people talk enough about is the number of patients who needed real, consistent, significant medical assistance throughout the lockdown period, who were pushed off to the side, who were sort of disallowed the care that they had already paid for, that they were paying money for. You pay a monthly insurance premium and you have medical needs, you expect those needs to be met. If at least in the US, where we're, people who can't afford it.
I get it. Yeah. Okay. So another thing, dude, I want to talk to you for years. You know that, right?
Okay, well, I'll tell you what, Rob. We've got to get. I got to sign off on the radio, but we can stick around on YouTube for a little bit. So if you'll give me about a minute and a half to close out, then we can pick this up for a little bit more. And then I do kind of got to get out of here. I have to go meet Commander X's lawyer before our next show. So in between now and then, I got to run down to Santa Cruz and talk to Jay for a minute. But if you have been listening on Aftermath.fm or the iHeart, thank you so much. We do this every Sunday here from 10 a.m. on the West Coast to noon. It's 1 p.m. on the East Coast till 3. We will be here regularly, except next week when I will be traveling. Gonna have to figure out something for that show. I am going to be going to Denver on Tuesday as part of the Home Run for Julian tour. John and Gabriel Shipton are in the U.S. advocating on behalf of Julian Assange, raising awareness about his situation and the U.S. government's gross overreach to try to gain international jurisdiction over the press. If you live anywhere near Denver, San Francisco, Los Angeles, or Washington, D.C., please go to AssangeDefense.org/tour. That will give you the times and dates of the events. I will be emceeing the Denver rally at the state capitol. There's an event at the Denver Press Club before that. Please come out for it. Really looking forward to seeing everyone. Cannot wait to get out there and get filming. I'll be turning all of the footage I shoot into a documentary. Have not done that before and have a particular story I want to tell, so I'm looking forward to that. And we're about out, right?
Yeah, we're out.
All right. So, hey, Rob, are you still with us?
Still here, man. Free Commander X. Love to everybody in the chats. We'll see you soon.
Oh, you don't have to hang up. I was just trying to get out of the radio show. I was just trying to close out of the radio show. If you got something specific you want to talk about, my friend, I'm here for you.
I got all kind of stuff I want to talk about, man.
Rob just went full Festivus. I got a lot of problems with you.
I got some grievances there.
Nah, not like that. But I got all kind of shit I want to complain about, and I'd love to explore a couple of ideas, not necessarily involving fully, shall we say, legal means. I want to find every possible way around the law, you know what I'm saying? And so I'd like to talk about some of that too.
Well, I mean, Rob, here in America, we're all outlaws now. We're all domestic terrorists now. So none of it. We just wake up and everyone's on a list. Everyone's a potential disease vector. Everyone's a potential threat risk. So putting on pants is a criminal act.
In a way, come on, man. In a way, this is awesome. America gets to feel like the rest of the world has felt for a couple of decades.
That's a very good point, my friend.
Yep. I got a few.
That is a very good point. No, I mean, and look, we've been saying for years now, and went to the extent to where we themed an event around the concept: we are all Assange.
Yeah.
We are any one of us at any point can be kidnapped by the U.S. government and renditioned to a prison cell where we'll face a kangaroo court just for vocalizing facts that lie outside of the official narrative.
That's right. You breathe too hard, somebody say, you said something I don't like, and I'll put you in jail. Yep. It's
Joe
a fucked up thing.
telling everyone to go be a snitch. I'm going to pull up that clip, I think. Let's see if I can find it real quick. I just did a keyword search on Joe Biden and snitch. And look, there it is.
I'm sorry. I'm really trying hard to have respect for the President of the United States, man. But every time I turn on anything that emits noise, I hear about how fucked up that story is, too.
Is there actual video in this clip? Or do I have to go look it up? Oh, come on. We do it live. I don't know if you guys remember that or not, but why are you?
This is the way it goes, my friend. This is what we do. We live.
Well, that's the press briefing. So I'll just read from the press briefing, I guess, and pull that up on the screen. God, my computer's running slow. In an unclassified study of that, or a summary of the baseline study. Oh, this is about the joint kind of ODNI threat assessment. Where in the hell? We already read through this on the show.
I love you, chat people. I love you, chat people.
Oh, there we go.
Shit. I'm gonna get my
right? No, I'm sorry for the dead air, guys. I really am.
I want to break a law. Okay, so early on, I was talking about breaking Julian out of jail, and I got shut down because that would be putting a finger in the eye of justice, right? But there ain't no justice in America. Why the hell aren't we breaking X out?
Well, because most of us don't want to be murdered by the state, I think. It is why we haven't launched a full-scale assault on the Santa Rita jail.
Okay, let me I'm sure my story mind is in right now, Steve. Let me give you an indication of just how fucked up things are upstairs for Rob, all right?
Hey, man.
First thing I think when I hear, listen. The first thing I think when I hear that the people are afraid of the state is, what the fuck happened to all the bikers, man? Once upon a time, bikers ruled. They all go away?
They incorporated. You can now buy officially licensed Hell's Angels merchandise. The Mongols have a TV show. That's what happened. Hey, Rob, Josh is telling me that we do got to get out of here, and I do. I got to haul ass to Santa Cruz and meet X's lawyer. Josh needs to get to the store before his ride goes away. Rob Juno, thank you so much for calling in, my brother. I do appreciate you very much.
I love you all. Bye.
We love you too, Rob. Well, that's gonna do it
for each other.
I missed that.
I did too.
I said, stay strong, everybody, and look out for each other.
Yes, sir. That's gonna do it for the show, everyone. I wanna thank you all for watching. Big thanks to Alison Morrow for being an excellent guest. We'll probably end up trying to clip out a little bit of that interview. I think it's been a minute since we put clips up on the MCSC main page anyway. We'll be back in a few hours. I'll be joined by Glory Jones for that. We'll see you at let's say 3, but maybe a little bit later on the West Coast, 6-ish on the East Coast. Huge thanks to the folks who called in. Thanks as always to Sleepy Josh on the ones and twos. Go buy Josh a coffee. buymeacoffee.com/Bort, B-O-R-T. He keeps things spinning around here, and yeah, go do the damn thing. Home run for Julian. If you're anywhere near Denver, get out there. June 23rd, 5 p.m., State Capitol. Would love to see you. Hunter Kranza, who's a big friend of the show, has been talking about organizing a birthday event for Julian in Vegas. So if you're anywhere, I know we got other people in Vegas that watch the show. I know we do. Get at me, and I will, to the best of my limited time, at least try and get you guys in contact with some other people who can help you throw a proper bash. I think that's gonna do it. Yeah, we'll see you in a few hours. Good luck to us all.